I'm in Harrodsburg, Kentucky at Old Fort Herrod State Park. This is a very unique place. Behind me is a replica of what is supposedly the first or the oldest white settlements west of the Allegheny Mountains. It's got a couple other features here, like a historic mansion museum and the cabin that Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln were married in. So I'm very excited to be here. I've wanted to come here for a long time. Let's go check this out. So up there is a replica of Fort Herrod. And from my understanding, Fort Herrod was actually right here where they built the parking lot. So this is where all the history actually happened, right where I'm standing, not up there. That is a good representation of what old pioneer forts look like out here. Made almost completely from wood. Actually, it looks like this is a really well done replica. It has a lot of different cabins. The fort was constructed in 1775. It was British originally, then American pretty soon after that. Yeah, that's a millstone. Looks like he has been shaved. This is a plaque on James Harrod, who founded the fort. Alright, the first one is the gunsmith.
60% every single time. Like if you go to a gun shop, you know, and you buy a box of shells, you don't want one shell and the dependability shot to shot that you want. And then with a rifle, with a smoothbore, like that's a 64 caliber over there, and it will take, if they use what the Indians normally would, it would take like about a 590.
This is pretty interesting. This is a bamboo maze inside the fort. This is cool. I feel like I'm stuck in the bamboo. I'm in a little fort. So the fort was founded in this area because of the spring. This was their water supply, and apparently the guy who was in charge of the water supply got beheaded outside the fort by Native Americans in 1787. There's a random little monument to George Washington. So this is kind of a living history park. I don't know if they're cooking anything or if that's just water. It feels hotter over here. Guess they would store gunpowder kegs in the backside of the fort. This is the blacksmith. All the metal work was done. This is McGinty's Ordinary. So on the second floor, this was living quarters, I assume. Here's a second floor view of the fort. Take a look at some of these other outbuildings here. This was a family cabin. So you could have a one-room log cabin. The ceilings are pretty high. I'm surprised they didn't have a loft or anything. Guess this one is the outhouse. This cabin has an exhibit on broom making, which sounds Not gonna lie, very boring. I guess this shows the process.
Cabins, the first fort was built across the road, and those were 20 by 20, and these are 14 by 14 that they have over here. It's a replica of the other, the original cabins. So we have the blocks, the shoot eyes for the, it's kind of cranky and don't want to work.
Oh, okay.
Over
So
200 years old.
wow.
So, not one to work.
This is a replica of the first schoolhouse in Kentucky. And it's just a log one-room schoolhouse. This is in memory to Mrs. Coombs, the first teacher.
Welcome to hear and listen to anything. Gunsmith's supposed to be out shooting the gun for them, so we were thinking lye water. The lye comes from the ashes, and you put it in a container called a hopper, has a spout, put the water there, and it leaches out. They boil it with animal fat. This is from the original fort, maybe 2 or 3. And that's one of them. Parts
Wow.
are missing, it doesn't blow, but now when they blew, they get that message in the horn blower, who his descendants donated this one back to the fort. They blow it, you hear it, just like a tornado siren. You get to the fort as fast as you can. And because there's danger when you hear that sound. The whole process.
So George Rogers Clark was the military commander here for 4 years, and I guess this is what would have been his headquarters. I guess Clark is credited with saving the fort. The fort was under siege by the Native Americans for months, and he was always able to get out and find enough supplies to survive. That's how Kentucky used to be spelled, with an E at the end. Guess this is another homestead.
She makes a hush baby.
Just the main crop they had here, like Virginia, was tobacco.
So you start off your first push at about maybe 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch, shove it down, then you go back a little bit farther, shove her down a little bit more, seat it down real good and solid against the powder charge. And this will be half of this much, 1/3 this much will be the size of my prime. Toss it in the pan. And now it's primed, but it's still unshootable because I have it on half cock. That's the way you carry it. Now, when you get ready to shoot something, which we had a lot of tasty somethings out here to shoot, tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of them. 1,800 pound, 800 pound black bear, all kinds of great things to shoot. You would bring this back, full cock. Now it's ready. So, we'll say we're looking at a nice fat 1,000 pound cow elk, some of the best beef you ever ate in your life. Good shot, maybe 75 yards away. Grab the gun, take the bead, and everybody gets steak tonight.
So right near the fort, that was right there in the parking lot, is the cemetery. This is the oldest pioneer cemetery in the state of Kentucky. And here it is. These are the graves of the first white settlers in the state of Kentucky. Apparently there's still 480 gravestones surviving here. You can see none of them are really marked or anything. They just put stone Here's two of the more unique graves here. That one's very large. And this one is like a full body cover tomb. One of the biggest graves in the cemetery is to Anne McGinty, the first woman to bring the first spinning wheel to Kentucky. She died in 1815. See, Revolutionary War patriot, that must have been her husband. Apparently this is the grave of Thomas Jefferson Head, the son of Jesse Head, the pioneer preacher, who married the parents of Abraham Lincoln in a cabin very close by. Really, these graves have not aged well. At least they survived, but they're in really bad shape. And I mean, there's not really anything you can do to preserve them. This one's totally crumpled up. This is the most elaborate grave here. It's like a full sarcophagus. The founder of the Fort James Herrod apparently died in a hunting mission. You don't know how he died. This is the grave of Catherine Bush, baby who died in 1800 at 2 years old. It's really sad about the pioneer days is that they had to have so many kids because so many of the children would die. Very few would survive to adulthood. The first white child buried in Kentucky is entombed here. Look at that squirrel. If he touches the ground, he's gonna get electrocuted and die. Fried squirrel. A monument to the 200th anniversary of the founding of Harrodsburg by Captain James Harrod. This monument was dedicated by space pioneer Neil Armstrong. Opposite the Pioneer Cemetery is a monument to the fort's military commander, George Rogers Clark. Looks like this is more a monument to the settlement, settled 1774. I find that so cool. So George Rogers Clark is a very important person in early American history. Most people don't know anything about him if they're not from Indiana, or most people in Indiana don't know anything about him. But he was born in Virginia. He's also the brother of William Clark of the Lewis and Clark expedition. But he was one of the early settlers out here. Again, he was the military commander of Fort Herrod for 4 years. And after that, when the Revolutionary War happens, he led the Northwest expedition. And then at Fort Sackville, which is now present-day Vincennes, he surprise attacked Fort Sackville in the winter. He was very smart. He was severely outnumbered when attacking Fort Sackville. But he created an illusion. He had all his men make campfires surrounding the fort, and it could be assumed that a lot of men would have been at each one, even though there were like 2 or 3 at each. You know, they had that all night. They kind of sieged the fort, and that did force General Hamilton to surrender Fort Sackville, and with that, the Northwest Territory of the United States was secured for the United States. So he's a pretty important guy in American history. Definitely cool to see another monument to him. Also, FDR dedicated the monument here, and brought about 60,000 people out to Harrodsburg. There is more to Fort Herrod State Park. This is the Mansion Museum. So we're gonna head inside here. Well, here's the front of the mansion. It's one of the oldest Greek Revival homes in the state of Kentucky, and it was built in 1813. Seriously? No cameras? The reason apparently is they think that if someone takes pictures, someone will rob the museum. Morons. But I accidentally left my camera on while I was walking around, so here's some footage. Take note, robbers. The mansion has its own freaking Abraham Lincoln room, with paintings, a bust, and a replica of the Council of War depicting Lincoln, Grant, and Edwin Stanton. There's a replica of Leonard Volk's life mask of Lincoln. This table was in Lincoln's funeral train. Some original documents relate to the Lincoln family, including one signed by Abraham. They have a document signed by President George Washington. This room has a lot related to Kentucky pioneer history. That is a fragment of tree bark that Daniel Boone carved his initials into. You can see DB. That is a guest book signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt while he was here dedicating the George Rogers Clark Memorial. Some Native American artifacts. They even have some old music boxes and phonographs. And of course, a lot of old pioneer guns. So just a message to the state of Kentucky. I would love to give this attraction an A-star rating, but I can't because of that stupid rule. So change it. And right over here is something very unique and very historic and important. This is the Lincoln Marriage Shrine. Now inside this actual church/temple is not a church with like pews and stuff. There's a separate building inside here. And inside there is the cabin that Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks Lincoln were married in. So the temple here is built like a little church. It was built in 1933. The 125th anniversary of their marriage. I think with this, I've now been to all of the Kentucky Lincoln sites. I've been to Farmington and Louisville, Sarah Bush Johnston, his stepmother's sites in Elizabethtown, his birthplace in Boyetown and Hodgenville, the place where his parents grew up in Springfield, Battle of Perryville, and here Harrodsburg, Lexington, Mary Todd Lincoln's home and birthplace, Frankfort connections. So I'm doing good on the Lincoln Trail in Kentucky. So here in the cornerstone, I guess this is the time difference from when they were married in 1806 to 1931 when this building was built. So like Lincoln's fake birthplace cabin, this cabin also gets its own building to cover it up and protect it. And from my understanding, this is the real structure where they were married in. The cabin was built in 1782, so I guess this is technically one of the oldest structures in the state of Kentucky too. Wow. The cabin here is not on the original site where they did get married, but I mean it is the same building. This is where the event that conceived Abraham Lincoln happens. Incredible. On June 12th, 1806, Reverend Jesse Head performed the wedding between Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks. And then 5 years later, they did it, and they had a baby, Abraham Lincoln, in Hodgenville, Kentucky. And history was forever changed. There's an old plaque there about the marriage cabin. And poor Nancy Hanks passed away when Abraham was still pretty young. She died in Indiana, and she's buried at their farm there. This is actually very cool, the way it's protected like this. Look at that, they even have stained glass in here. Yeah, this is a very little known Lincoln historic site. This is impressive. This is an Osage orange tree from the late 18th century. So here's like the main street of downtown Harrodsburg. It's a nice little town, historic town. Population about 8,000. Here's a marker near Harrodsburg, Greenville Springs. It was discovered by Reverend Jesse Head, the guy who married Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. I'm not staying here, but I had to show this place. This is the Beaumont Inn. You can see this used to be Beaumont College from 1895 to 1915. It's a famous girls' school. Offered art, elocution, a conservatory of music, and the strongest of literary courses in preparation for the best American and European schools. 4 years after the college closed, it became an inn. It's a beautiful building, wow. I think this is where you'd learn to become a good Southern belle. That's an outbuilding. Very cool. I was looking for somewhere to eat here in Harrodsburg, and I found the old Owl Tavern. Alright, so that was Fort Herrod State Park. Got to see the fort recreations, very cool, along with the cemetery and the George Douglas Clark Memorial. The Mansion Museum, that's great, but they don't allow photography. I already complained plenty about that, I know. Yeah, that's stupid, Kentucky. Prove me you're not stupid. And the stereotype, you can do it. And also seeing the Lincoln Marriage Temple, very cool. Another Lincoln historic site. There aren't too many that I haven't been to at this point, so we gotta seek out those last ones. If you like this video, you like museums, roadside attractions, that sort of thing, then please check out all my other videos and subscribe. Thanks for watching.